I will read the opening statement. So I just want to remind you all that the public session of this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the Vale Regional Council website following the meeting and archived for a period of 3 years. To those members of the public here today, all care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is understood your consent is given if your image is inadvertently broadcast. I also remind all present that the local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in court, law and material standards. So just a reminder for us all. Now I would like to invite our Councillor Thurston to give us an overview.
Please be upstanding. Never let us forget reference in the holy presence of God. Almighty God, we ask that you give us wisdom in the decisions we make here today and give us guidance in working with our regional communities to promote their social, economic, environmental and cultural well-being. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Thurston. I have received apologies from Chairman Reader, which is the reason why I'm the Chair, and Councillor Crosby, who are down on LGZ business in Wellington. Also have apologies for lateness from Councillor Eating and Councillor White. And I think perhaps we should count Councillor Longer in there also, because he maybe I tracked it quite well. So are there any other people in the room? No, obviously not. I'll move that we accept the apologies. Thank you, Councillor Rose. Secondly, I've got the motion. All those in favour? Aye. I've just noted that Councillor Von Garrison is attending by Zoom. She's not yet arrived. That's great. Do we have any conflicts of interest for the items that we're considering today?
Yes, I chair the Kaituna catchment control.
Thank you.
And I'm on the committee as well.
Councillor John, thank you for that. Also, if anybody had any conflicts for yesterday's hearings, we didn't give you an opportunity to record those, so if you do have any we want to record, you can send to me after this meeting. So now we'll move on to our first event today, and welcome to the members of the Untitled Chapter Control Scheme Advisory Group. Gentlemen, we've got Richard Well, Roger Hint, Nick Chater and Barry Robert. So would you like to take your place at the minutes table? Gentlemen, the floor is yours. You've got 10 minutes for submissions, but if you finish it, you've already will have enough time for questioning. So I'll just pass the floor to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to come along and have our say for our scheme. You've got probably a submission in front of you, written, or read it out to you. Go there. Well, there's 3 of us. I'm Richard Well, Barry Roderick, Roger Hintz. We'll speak into parts of the submissions. Is that all right? Cool. Today our submission topic relates to the draft Rivers and Drainage Asset Management Plan 2021-2071, the long-term draft plan, and in particular the capital works program for the replacement of the Ford Road pump station and gravity floodgates. Basically, summary of the submission will be: the Kaituna Catchment Control Scheme has been financially disadvantaged and incurred a reduced pumping service level for over a decade as a consequence of the Council's Kaituna River Rediversion Project. And the KCCS continues to receive additional water from built-up developments, including Pakamo East, Bell Road System, Te Puke Urban surrounds, and large developments currently proposed, including Rangiora Business Industrial Park and 200 house lots as a residential subdivision in Te Puke. All this additional water requires increased pumping at a cost to the scheme. I won't read the rest of that, I think it's all there for you. But we'll move on to the background of the scheme. Ford Road Pump Station is one of 3 pump stations servicing the eastern drainage area of the Lower Kaituna Catchment Control Scheme. The pump station contains 2 750 litre per second pumps, complemented by a gravity outlet consisting of 3 1800 floodgated arch culverts. The station and floodgates are located at the downstream end of the Ford Road drain. The Ford pump station was rebuilt in 1982 as part of major works of the Kaituna Catchment Control Scheme. A new floor was constructed in 85 and replacement pump number 2 installed in October 2006. The floodgated arch culverts were lined shortly after this pump replacement as short-term temporary works to keep them operational. The station has been maintained with normal pumping service and repairs over its operating life. Prior to the recently developed Kaituna Redivision project, drainage and flood water from the station exit directly to the Kaituna River through an existing cut-off river loop, approximately 400 metres upstream from the Kaituna River mouth. So basically it flew straight out. Following redivision works, drainage and flood water from the station now exit into the rediversion channel just upstream of the rediversion control gates. The majority of the flood and drainage water now flows directly into the Makatu estuary. Good.
Okay. And Chair, councillors, if I can just speak to the actual planned pump station and floodgate replacement. So this particular piece of infrastructure is quite old, very old. So it was put in place in the 50s. So at the turn of the century, it had pretty much met its service life. So it was identified in the early 2000s that it was desperately needing replacement. It had had some refurbishment. You can see that it was formally documented and programmed in 2006 to be replaced. It generally wasn't meeting the level of service that we were paying for. And so it was budgeted for, so this is with $4 million into the budgets for 2008, 2009 to be replaced. And at the time then you can see that the budgeted costs were for the floodgates and pumps, and for an upgrade of the pumps to a higher service level was $1.5 million in 2008, 2009. It subsequently then became benched or put to one side because of the Kaituna rediversion. So council decided that we could not proceed with those works because there was a much higher priority, and that the rediversion from a public good had a much higher importance. So it was put to one side, and it was scheduled at least twice more after that. The problem being is that the rediversion took considerably longer than anticipated, and I can assure you there was a great deal of discussion and push within our group to have the pump station actually included within the rediversion, because we saw it as a package that you couldn't deal with it in isolation, that it should have been dealt with at the same time. But the powers that be felt that the rediversion needed to happen first. So we revisited again 2 more times, and we find ourselves now sort of 12 years, 14 years down the line, finally being able to revisit the pump station. So we can see in those tables that the pump station and some subsequent revisions of capital required to rebuild the station went to 2.2. Those figures were actually based on actuals, so they weren't pie in the sky. There were pump stations just up the river that had been built of exactly the same capacity. And so those figures were quite real figures on the day and expectations of the group. And we were more than happy to proceed with that. The problem is we find ourselves today in 2021 looking at budgeting for 2022-23. Those figures sit somewhere between $10 and $16 million. We also find, because of the public good, that we no longer are able to build the pump station where it is, or not in the configuration it is. So we are more than likely either going to have to pipe, which is probably in my view unlikely, to a more northern destination, or we go back upstream to a pre-existing large facility and increase that capacity there, which will also incur extra cost. But that's all part of the between $10 and $16 million funding. The diagonal option is a slightly cheaper, but for us as a liaison group, it is an absolutely eye-watering figure. And we had the opportunity to deal with this in 2006, or in 2008, 2009, and we were denied that opportunity. We were not getting the level of service then. We're certainly not getting the level of service now. And now we're looking at something that's absolutely eye-watering, and we're asking the council to come and play its part and to help us out through no fault of our own, and certainly as a result of some very good works for public good. Like the scheme has been, the reversion has been very successful. The water quality in the estuary is deeply improving, the health of the estuary is improving. So it was a very good investment, but we feel that probably the two things should have been dealt with at the same time rather than in isolation. And so hence that we are considerably disadvantaged by the time delay, by service and the capital cost. It should have been addressed at the same time, and we find ourselves in this predicament. I don't know if I can add much more than that.
Right. Thanks, Roger. I was talking about another part of it. What I started hitting on was the development pressures we're getting from outside the area. The pumping network is at the bottom end of a vast and complicated drainage system that services catchments from Papamoa, Tara Road area, to the west of Te Puke, Paingaroa, to the east and up through the Makarira and the Kaituna. All new and proposed built developments of the catchment do or will add additional pumping requirements to our network. This is highlighted by the flooding issues in the Bell Road system, the two new stationary pumps built and paid for by the scheme, which required to service farms below Te Puke. We've just done that. The additional pump required a diagonal drain station as a result of additional runoff from the Taronga Eastern Link. I was talking to one of the owners of the Bell Road today. He was saying that when Taronga City Council put their pumping over on their side, they just estimated that it'll do about 100 hours a year. In the first year, it did 1,000 pumping. And that was before we had the big flood in 2007 or whatever it was, the big flood we had over there. And the oil farms been open for so long. Plus, with all the new proposals of ongoing the development, including the new industrial park around Uru, housing lots at Te Puke, Paingaroa, and numerous other developments and land use changes throughout the catchment. Developments that claim to drain directly into the river or canal also affect the drainage network. These add additional volumes of water that incrementally increase water levels and duration of flood events. These water levels and flood duration increases reduce gravity outflows, increasing pumping requirements. I've been farming my present property since 1978 on the edge of the Kaituna. And in the early days, we loved the gravity gates. They just took all the water away, the river. But since development in Rotorua and Taronga and Te Puke, we notice now that the water runs higher, longer, and the gravity gates are less and less open. So to meet our requirements of a 72-hour water levels, we've had to require more and more pumping now to get our land to the drainage, to basically take the water, top of the water off. We just cannot use the gravity gates. So with all these development pressures require the stream to respond with additional pumping, clear flooding, and maintain drainage in low property areas. So yeah, our biggest problem is that it's just the development outside. It's just absolutely putting the pressure to the point that even the the Kaituna's been sorting up from the deforestation up rivers and stuff like that. And we just started the buildings for each other. So yeah, we've been really disadvantaged by what's happened, especially with the rediversion.
Thank you. We're just about out of time for this mission. Could you just wrap up?
Yeah, look, I'm Barry Roderick and I'm independent of these guys because I've got no skin in the teeth in terms of paying rates on the scheme, although I'm a member of the Kaituna Catchment Control Group. And look, I'd just like to say that as an independent person, I've spent a lot of time in this area in my lifetime, counting broods, working in the Kaituna wildlife management area, fishing Makatū, and the council's rediversion has been tremendous for the area. It's you guys got to take a lot of credit for the way the estuary is cleaned up. It's been great, and these guys fully acknowledge that the drain water that's coming down Ford Road and the diagonal drain is not pleasant to look at. A lot of that is because of the substrate that's coming through. It's coming through both peat and iron substrate, which stains the water and makes it probably look a lot worse than it is. But also, this time of year, when the algae is breaking up, the pumps pumping it cause the lignin to react, and you get a lot of frothing, which public look at that and they think it's just not a good look. But over probably the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of things change in the farming community in this catchment. You've seen effluent systems upgraded, and because of your policies, I might add. Most of those waterways have been stopped now. Farming practices have changed a lot. They realise that it's no longer acceptable to be farming cows knee-deep in mud, and grass is money. Mud doesn't make these guys money. So they'll become a lot more efficient in what they do. I think their losses to the environment are a lot less than they used to be, and I think in the future, with new technology, I think losses of nutrients, sediment, etc., will be a lot less. So I think that we're all horrified at the cost of this project and how it's gone up from 2 million to 10, 15 million, and it's hard for us to get heads around it. Thank you for the time. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And we've got a question from Councillor Parker. I just wanted to note that we are doing some work on the reassessment of the scheme. Is that right, Chris?
Yes. Yeah, we're looking at the impacts of the change in land use, as Roger was speaking about. In fact, we've got a draft report just arrived and that shows it go through it here.
Yeah, my question was along the line, guys, you seem to have been significantly disadvantaged by urban development, highway development, etc., and it's put you, so why are you only, in my view, asking for a 50-50 split, where I would possibly thought you may have thought that the public benefit was greater than 50% of the cost of correcting what actually occurred. So my question is, yeah, 50-50 is arbitrary, or do you think that's a realistic assessment of where the costs are for?
We basically have in the budget, we have to draw a line. We say if you basically start dialogue with you guys about it. We know we've got to put something in, and how much you put in. So at the moment, like these are the council's immediate costings. They may be cheaper, they may be more expensive, but we've got to start something. We've got to talk something. It's arbitrary. Yes, basically an arbitrary gesture to try and get something motivated. Like we're having so disadvantaged in that scheme, just that area with that new rediversion.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, councillors? If not, thank you very much for your time. We will consider that deliberation.
Thank you for your time.
Okay,
So now we have submitted 131, Maria Caracas.
Toy coffee, one of these days, please, bring whatever.
Is this a date?
Yeah. I'm seeing you on Friday morning.
It's delicious.
I do get around. Okay, but in a really nice way. And it's about, my kōrero today is about how we get around. And I had to really think hard about what I submitted on, because I've been submitting on a bunch of things lately. But there are two things that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and one of those is we're going to have a massive increase in the amount of traffic on our roads here in the Eastern Bay of Plenty with all of the new work that's coming on. That is going to increasingly put pressure on a system that wasn't designed for it, as you have all seen in Tauranga. I remember moving to Tauranga some 30 years ago, a lovely little seaside city that grew into a big grown-up city without an infrastructure to support it, and I see the same thing happening here in Whakatane as well. What we need to do is actually change the culture of the way that we move around the community, and there are two ways that we can do that. One is by making buses free for our rangatahi. If we can get our kids using buses to get to school instead of parents dropping off, then that becomes the beginning of a lifelong bus using culture. So when they go off to university or go off to the city to work or whatever, they'll continue to do that. But it starts with getting our kids using buses now. The other way that we can do that is by making our communities more bike friendly, and I have to say that Whakatane is probably the least bike friendly place I've ever ridden. I worry all the time about my boy going out on his bike. We make kids use their bikes by making safe places for them to cycle, but also safe recreational places. Like my son is 11 and is about to go in the Ames Games, which I'm really proud of him. His first racing he'll be doing mountain biking. We spend a tremendous amount of time at Onipu. Thank you, Bill. You're amazing and we love you. Onipu is a really long way away, and I have to drive him there. We can't just ride there. We actually need you guys to figure out how you can enable this community to have some really positive bike spaces closer to town so that we can get the kids riding. I look to Whakatane District Council for things like that all the time, but it just doesn't ever seem to happen. Whether there's no money for it or there just isn't the interest in it, I do not know. But given that there has been a tremendous amount of public support for it and a call for it and nothing's happening, maybe it needs to come from you guys. You have money, you have power, you have the heart for the community, and I'd really like to see that manifest in some positive spaces for our kids, particularly around fitness and well-being and safety, and also trying to reduce the congestion on our roads, which solves an ongoing problem. And for those of the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, which I didn't submit on, but it's really on my mind at the moment. For those of you who have not seen Seaspiracy, I encourage you to look at it. I encourage you to give serious thought to the fact that we are having sustainable fishing of species that can't sustain themselves, and I wonder how any of that can possibly make sense. And while you are all sitting here not actually demanding that we immediately stop commercial fishing around the Bay of Plenty, that's something that you need to have really seriously consider, is that our oceans are dying, we are letting them die, everyone's sitting on their hands while they die, and every second breath that you take every day of your life comes from the ocean that's dying. And that's all I have to say about that. Kia ora.
Thank you. Before you go, are there any questions?
They're all terrified.
Yeah, you're going to set your date time, please.
the Regional Transport Committee this morning, and she mentioned the fact that they are investing very heavily in the first few years of their long-term plan in active streets. So they have got some funding from central government, and they're doing a lot of work in that space, so that may meet some of your concerns.
It may do for the sort of day-to-day moving around, but it's the recreational side. If you look at what Bill achieved out of Wanipu, we need that same kind of thing closer to town, so that our kids are just enabled to be independent, because like I've got the means to be able to put a $500 bike rack on my car with a tow bar that I have to pay a lot of money for and drive my son out to Wanipu. But for those families who can't do that, it's a barrier for them. So we need to actually look at how we can remove barriers, and we do that by providing access.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Maura, Tenakwe. I just wanted to ask, how does your son currently get to and from Kudo?
We live 350 metres from his school, which is why I bought my house, another side of my privilege, bought my house close to his school so I didn't have to drive him. Yeah, and he is a boy who knows how to get to the Warren Cold and independently rides everywhere, because I've enabled him by riding with him and making him a comfortable rider. But there are so many of our kids who don't have that.
Knowing that all of our services are user pays, that the increased services, we either get it through general rates or targeted rates. Knowing that, do you think that there is room for more public transport? So more bus routes, more buses basically in and around Whakatane or Tania as well?
Yeah, I totally do. There are always ways to save money. It's not hard to go looking for things that are old and redundant that you're paying for that don't need to be paid for. If you need a hand with that, let me know. I'll come with my red pen. And there's also a lot of money in central government that you guys can access, and particularly with the philanthropic funders as well. A little bit from here, a little bit from there, adds up to a whole pot of money to actually start making some change happen. There is a mood for change. There will never be a better time than right now under this Labour government that is absolutely motivated for social wellness.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Enjoy your day, you guys. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
It's my dramatic interest.
And now we welcome Karen Summerhays. Welcome, Karen. Good to see you. You're not in such good shape today. I said you're not in such good shape today.
I'm in really good shape today. Tēnā koutou, ko hui hui no my name. E mihi ana ki ngā mana whenua. Ko Karen Summerhays tōku ingoa no Te Huki Aho. I know. It's been a while since I've been in these rooms. It might change somewhat. Anyway, so this is my prop. This box contains all the information that the Regional Council has done on genetic engineering and the environment over the years. It's heavy. So, I'm a former regional councillor. I've been an advisor to soil and health on the local government aspects of managing genetically engineered organisms in the environment. Some have called me an environmentalist, and I've been a GE-free advocate for over 25 years. So today, I'm not here to convince you one way or the other as to whether or not the Bay of Plenty should have stronger restrictions around genetically engineered organisms in the environment. But I am here to ask you to honour a promise that was made to me as a councillor. That when the jurisdiction between the RMA and the HASNO had been settled through the experiences in Northland and Auckland, that this council would revisit it. New Zealand's at the moment GE-free. The only organism that has been approved for use is a vaccine for horses, and it's only to be used in an emergency. That's a live vaccine we're talking. So this status has brought obviously economic and social identity to New Zealand. And it's thanks to the organisations like Soil and Health, Friend New Zealand, and numerous individuals like myself who have been sticking at this kaupapa for many, many, many years. So this box has all the information that you need, because I'm sure that it's lost. And I'm happy to share this box with you. It has the findings of a major Māori hui that was undertaken to find out the perspectives of Māori in this space. It has the regional policy statement, conversations and submissions around this space. It has a document, quite a thick document, exploring the issues and policy options that has been done. So a lot of groundwork has already been done. Nothing much has changed in the legislation, except for that there is an acceptance that both the HASNO and the RMA have a duty of care to impart. So just a few things that, I mean, a lot of things have been covered in my submission. I'm not going to go through all of that sort of thing, but it's time that the regional policy statement had more rigour. There are reasons why Northland, Auckland and the Hawke's Bay have put in strong rules around GMOs and the environment. And that's for you to discover and for you to make sure that you're doing your duty of care in this space. There is a very strong lobby towards GE from the research institutes and from some sector groups like Federated Farmers. All that glitters is not gold. And one of the things that is really important about this is that once an organism, a GMO, is approved for general release into the environment, it becomes part of the environment. It is no longer regulated, it is your responsibility. And the other thing that happens is that in an application for a GMO release, the associated activities that go with that release are not considered. So Scion's endeavour to have buster-resistant pine trees planted across the whole of the Kaingaroa Plateau looks at the organism and says, does it interfere with our native flora and fauna? That was but it doesn't look at the helicopter blanket spraying of the whole of the plateau with a herbicide. So there's some real issues around the legislation and how far it goes and how far it doesn't go. Here. So really, I guess I'm going to come to a bit of an end because it's in my thing. I'm asking you to honour the promise. I'm asking you to put some resources aside to set up an inter-council working party. This has to be led by the regional council. The district, the TLAs cannot do this on their own in their district plans. You need to lead this conversation and have it, re-look at the issue, go back out to the people and see what their opinions are, their approaches are. What things may have shifted. I might be totally out of date. I don't feel like I am. And especially when you see the economic argument that Pure Hawke's Bay has put up around their produce and having the premium that they get for their produce, being able to say that it comes from a GE-free region is huge. So don't underestimate the economic side of it. There's social, there is definitely cultural issues to do with this. And what's the other one? Oh, environmental. That's right. There is a few environmental issues to do with this as well. So I'm asking you to do your duty here, get something moving. And I know that this amount of money is not going to move the dial on your budget hardly at all, but it's quite hard to get things on the work program of the council. And this is one opportunity to make sure that I've got all your ears and that you can then go away and think, well, yes, actually, we might need to commit to this piece of money. So that's that bit. While I've got you, and I've got a minute, yeah. I would like you to consider about your instructions to Quayside. It's time that Quayside provided an environmental and social impacts report on the Port of Tauranga. And that includes activities taking place on their land, not just their own activities. And I'm talking particularly about the methyl bromide issue. And with that, on that note, Te Puke is not Taronga's dumping area. The idea of bringing methyl bromide out to the business area has got to be, well, if that happens, it has so got to be full capture. Don't think that just because it's an unpopulated area and it's got a smelly meatworks, that everything else smelly can go into that space as well. You know, send it up to Katikati. You know, we're a bit over being the dumping area, quite frankly. And that's not only around environmental stuff, that is around, I mean, I haven't seen any environmental programs whatsoever happen in Te Puke. No cleaner production, no working with the industries to see if they can clean up their oil that's leaking into the stream. So there's a lot of work to be done in Te Puke. I'd like you to make a little focus on Te Puke and have a little look around what's going on environmentally there. If there's not an initiative from the community that's coming up, then try and uffy it along, support it. There's only so much that one or two people can do. So that's me. Thank you very much. Welcome.
It's good to see that your passion has been favourite.
No, I think I've got worse today.
Councillors, do we have any questions for Karen?
Stumble into silence.
It's just one,
Yes, ma'am.
the box.
Oh, yes.
Leaving that behind for councillors' perusal.
I can, or I can pass it on to staff and they can take out the important bits and scan them for you. Something like that. You'd have a look at the box. Good. I'll just check it to make sure there's not any derogatory comments. My notes.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you very much for your time. Kia ora. Yeah, I'm going this one.
Yes. Is that Jason? Our next submitter is Ngāti Uru Jason Puro. And I'd like to pass over to Councillor White for you. Oh, and councillors, we do have, I think the submission is coming to Vale and we
Mahe waro kani ya toi mana. Orera e tara tira. E koro hoki pana to ko har mai te nei da. Am hi le nui ya putar. Hari mai ko ko to pakaro me ko to ko le roi mo te kapo te te hine. Orera ke ka ke mai ke mano nui mo le pena putar pena putar. Ta mai har mai te na.
Tira nui taku kōrero e pāna ki te kaipapa kua whakapāri ki hia. He tūana ki te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Te tuatahi he mea mihi ki tō tātou matu i te rangi ihoa o ngā mano tūau i pā io. Ki tonu ki te rangi me te whenua he maunga rongo ki te whenua he whakaaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. Nā reira ki a koutou katoa tēnā koutou. O te rahe whakaaro anō hoki ki a rātou kua wehe ki te pō. Koutou mā e noho ana ki konei ki roto o ngā tiawa. Tā mātou nei karanga matua a tapi e noho nei tātai anō i kua hoki ki te pō. Korua tahi ko tātātou nei karanga paia a rāhora e noho ana ia ki roto i te whakatohea ki rungi i te marae o Waiawa. Nō reira korua tahi me te katoa o a tātou nei mate haere. Hoki mai ki a tātou te hunga ora. Tēnei ka noho pakeiti a ngā tira ki te mihi atu ki a koutou te tepu kāwana. Kāwana mō toimoana, koutou mā tēnā koutou. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou mō tēnei wāhi, mō tēnei wahanga ki atu hei kōrero e pāna ki ngā kaupapa mō ngai tātou te hapu o ngā tira. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Kia ora.
Kare kia ora, tātou. Tūtawa mai, runga tūtawa mai, raro tūtawa mai, roto tūtawa mai mara. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki ako, te hauri e, ui e.
Anō hoki hi mihi, tēnei ki kia koutou, kia koe hoki te kaipaka, te tiamana, te tiawahine a Jane, tēnā koe. He mihi anō hoki kia koutou katoa ngā patukura, ngā māraikura o tēnei tepu, o tērā anō hoki ki te tangata whenua kia koe, pai ma te moana, e te rangatira, te taru me te rangatira toi. Anō hoki e noho whakaiti nei mātou i tēnei wā tēnā kātou. Kei konei ngā tira hapu te whakatohia iwi e tukumi. Ko mātou a ngā tira te mana whenua o te ngahere katoa o Waioeka. Mai Waitangi ki te taitoke rau, ki Waitangi rua ki te tonga, mai Mātiti ki te hauau, ki Titiwā ki te tairāwhiti. Koina te rohe katoa o tā tātou nei whenua o ngā tira. Ahakoa e nohana tā tātou whenua ki roto i te iwi o te whakatohia. Nō rei, kei te mihi tātou a ngā tira ki tēnei iwi o ngā tiawa me te manaki, kua manaki hia i a koutou, tēnā koutou. Today we come to speak on behalf of our people, ngā tira. We come here to speak about some of the historical issues that we have experienced over the last 155 years. Our land was invaded by the Crown, and as a result of that invasion of that whenua, we lost much of our identity. And so over the last 155 years, we have been doing our best to regain that identity along with the rest of the whenua urinui te motu. So we are here to express our connection to the whenua, our connection to the wai. The whenua and the wai, it sustains and nurtures our spiritual health, our physical well-being, and our emotional welfare. The whenua and the wai are the markers of our identity. And so over the last couple of years, we have taken a strong interest in making sure that the voice of ngā tira sits wherever it has to sit in order for any decision making to involve us as Manawatu. So we have been working with Toi Moana in terms of developing that partnership and that relationship, and we have appreciated the support that we have received from the Māori Policy Unit. And we'd like to acknowledge the Māori Policy Unit, also like to acknowledge Toi for coming to talk with us last year in relation to some of the concerns that we had in that area. We have begun the process of healing, including acknowledging not only our ancestral rights to our tino rangatiratanga on the whenua, but our te tiriti rights to genuine partnerships, to decision-making, to equitable access to opportunity and to resources, to enable options that empower us to support you to do the best that we can for whakatohea iwi, and also to enable us to create our own nation-building independence. So what heals us is ngā tira and our whenua, we believe heals the Wairapau Plenty region, our Plenty area. This is the reason why we are here, to talk to you in relation to our submission that we've offered. So we are committed to ngā tira, but we are small and we are few. We are also a group of people that don't really live in the world of the regional council. So our capability in understanding what you and your responsibilities are to look after our environment, we need support in that area. And we also need support in the capacity area. So I just wanted to introduce quickly my two sisters. The kōtai that we wear, the hats that we wear, we have many, and so it really spreads us thin. I am a trustee for the Whakatuma Pre-Settlements Claims Trust. I'm also a trustee on our board of trustees. I'm a member of our Kaimahi Rōpū. I'm a member of our College Maurua unit. I am a member of our Bāna unit, our Hapu unit, our Iwi unit, and that really spreads us thin in terms of us being able to hold the responsibility that we feel we have as kaitaki for the whenua. We have Anita, Kude, and if you just share what your thoughts are.
Tēnā tātou, Anita Kude Paruru, he tamariki o ngā toenga o i Haraira, he pulonga no te hahiringa tū, he tohunga hoki, I runga I tōku marae o Waiweka, ngā tira, I ngā wāmua he tūwake au te kuro o Waiweka, I tēnei wā koe te kairahi maurua o te whakatohia, me te whakatohia maurua strategic education plan, kua hoki te tai kaikaranga I runga I tōku marae, I runga I ngā marae kato o te whakatohia, mai waiata hoki, katai ka muso e taku tuhi ngā roa, tohu pairua, te kaupapa e whāna ki ngā mōtea te o tōku kāinga, no te mea I roto I era kupu, ngā kupu tuku I hoa mata o tepuna, te oranga moata tēnei tamariki.
Tēnā tātou ko te atātua ki taku ingoa, he tuatahi he māmahau, he mahi tino nui tērā. He kaimahia hau mō Eastbank, he kaitaki toia, tai awa hau mō taku hapu. Katahi anoa hau ka motu, he kaimahi mō te pātawhai ki o Pōtiki. Anoa nei he kai, hea te kupu, he kōra nei tā mō te ngā mahi tai awa pāna ki tō mātou whenua. He trustee ahau ringa I te Opeke Marae. He ahi kā, he kai tino tōna hoki noa ka keke. Kia ora.
So we wear a lot of hats and a lot of roles and responsibilities in order for us to fulfill our roles. And we do this for our people, we do this for our whenua and our taiao. So some of those constraints are about those different types of roles that we wear. And the sheer volume of mahi that we need to respond to is quite overwhelming for our small group. And that includes providing mātauranga Māori, mātauranga iwi, mātauranga hapu, to areas such as resource consent, marae, papakainga development, the implementation of te mano o te wai, flood control, all of those things that have an impact on the safety and well-being of our people. So we're here to speak to the Waiwhenua Regional Council long-term plan to ask, to offer some opportunities that we might have together. So as I said, what is good for Ngātira is good for the rest of the Waiwhenua region area. So we're looking to build our capacity and our capability to enable our small rōpū to be able to fulfil all of the other different types of roles that we look at. We want to grow and engineer our hapu, its capacity and its capabilities to contribute to the development of the environment across the Waiwhenua Regional Council. And we want a partnership that enables our voice to be heard and included in the future management of any matters within our taiao and our mana wai and our mana whenua. So in our submission, we have highlighted what those opportunities might be in terms of speaking to our ability to grow capacity and capability in Ngātira and with the Waiwhenua Regional Council. So I think that everything else you can see in the submission, but we'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be able to share our kōrero with you today at this table.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Councillor Wright.
Ngā mihi kia mihi aroha kia koutou koutou kāwa kōrero kia mātai tēnei. Your comments around, it's fulfilling a need to build capacity and capability and support. You referenced our mining policy unit, which is great to know that they're working with you on this. and your endeavour is one of partnership and trying to get to that genuine exchange. What, apart from that need, is there anything else that you wish to put on the table? I mean, your need and recognition is there. Any funding sources that you're looking for at the moment, or support to engineer that space for you?
Yeah, so I think our submission basically speaks to needing the funding or resources to be able to have a relationship with the Baukenji Regional Council in something like a relationship manager or a kaitiaki, or a kaitiaki management hub, where our voice, your voice, is able to walk together in terms of determining what a future looks like in the Waiwaka Gorge. So we're looking for support in enabling us to empower the regional council's environmental responsibilities.
Tēnā rā, koutou, tūtahi ki tēnei ki a koutou no kaha, te haramai tēnei ahihai, ki te takatu te whakaaro o Ngā Tira ki tēnei tēhu, no reira te mihi ki a koutou. My question is a really clear submission, so thank you. And he mahi rangatira tērā to lead that mahi for whakatōhia as well. So that leads to my question around the Ngāti Ira Mana Whenua Hub, realising that as a council we have a landscape of over 40 iwi and over 200 hapu. Whether or not Ngāti Ira would be open to discussions around a whakatōhia whānui kind of hub as well, whether or not Ngāti Ira would be able to participate in leading the grouping where the regional council can come in and go, okay, you fellas are whakatōhia together, let alone Tāparautia mā tātua, that would suit us a lot more. But we've been sitting here saying we cannot have one-stop shops. This isn't going to happen. There are unique groupings with not only geographical differences but cultural differences. This is how we translate it to our fellow councillors. So that's my whātai kia koutou. Is that a possibility to have those kinds of conversations with Ngāti Ira?
All possibilities are on the table. However, we must acknowledge though that when it comes to voices of hapu are different to the voices of the iwi kaha. That doesn't mean that as an iwi we can't work together. It just means that from our perspective, when we hold the mana whenua for the entire Waiwaka awa, not just a part of it, it's easier to work with us because having that decision-making authority from our perspective comes from that mana whenua and our connection to whenua in the way. But again, none of that is off the table as possibilities.
Sure,
Kia ora. Yeah, my question was much in the context of council ethics around position and its relationship with the regional council and the impending treaty settlement, which I know is along that contentious issue. Do you think that when the whakatōhia iwi settles, there will be a changing in the relationship? And understanding it's very much the context of what the council is, because we actually have discussed it. But here
I have the benefit of sitting on the Whakatōhia Pre-Settlements Claims Trust as a trustee, so I understand what the dynamic might be for our iwi going forward into the post-settlement governance entity. So the future for whakatōhia looks like hapu kore mo hapu mo te iwi katoa. So we have been very vocal in our conversations at our trust table around the mana of hapu to speak for hapu, alongside other hapu. So our submission here, although it is for Ngāti Ira, there is an alignment to the possibilities that might occur for the PSG once we're able to settle.
Kia ora.
Oh, thank you, Councillor.
Tēnā koutou, e te kia koutou. Hari fua ki te kia koutou, ki te honga ki te
kōrero e pāna ki ngā amonga o Kuruta. I have one question, and it is one of the challenging things that council is confronted with is around the pathway it's looking to take around partnerships with Te Māori. And on Monday, I asked one of our iwi in Taramoana, Ngāti Ranginui, the same question I want to ask you, because you're operating, or specifically you, because you're wearing a hat in the iwi cap, plus you wear your hapu cap. You, and I understand that you currently already working in partnerships with regional council at the moment, that's with Ngāti. Yeah. Do you see partnering with Te Māori needs to be at 2 levels? And what I mean by that is that should there be partnerships at the iwi level, and the iwi takes on a role and function of maybe governance, just for example, governance. And then we have partnership roles with the hapu that actually look at the pragmatic role of the kaitiaki and the operational mahi on the ground. Do you see that as being a way of allowing then both the hapu maintaining their autonomy as opposed to a fear of that autonomy being usurped by the iwi?
So I feel like we at Ngāti Hapu have a very good relationship, and when it comes to tino rangatiratanga, we are talking about hapu rangatiratanga, and we are talking about iwi rangatiratanga as well. So who speaks for who is the question. For Ngāti and our relationship with our iwi te whakatōhea, they acknowledge that we have mana whenua over the rohe that we commit our kaitiakitanga over. And they have enabled us to speak for ourselves on behalf of the iwi if we need be. So when I say enable, it's not that we give them the choice. We are quite strong about what hapu rangatiratanga means for us, and the voice that we want to speak to. So in the future, a voice in the Department of Conservation will need to be a voice that is led by Ngāti in our view, and we will continue to maintain that. So we're talking about operational versus governance, and whether iwi is capable or whether we feel that our iwi can speak on our behalf, as long as that person is us. Then yes, we'll be fine with that, or that we have a strong relationship with the voice that sits at that governance table. Then yes, we need to make sure that we have respectful relationships between those. And I don't think quite often it's a tension between hapu and iwi in terms of whether or not you are mutually exclusive or mutually inclusive. We're trying to navigate both of those pathways, but we are here to champion the voice of Ngāti on behalf of the Whakatōhea. So again, our iwi has been beautiful enough to help us and support us to voice our aspirations for our iwi.
Thank you. Just going to make Councillor Iwi last question.
Yeah, just one more quick question. While we've got you here, Jason, and you wear those two to the fire and you're here as Maangai for Ngāti Ira. So from a Ngāti Ira perspective, going into settlement, we've been having this conversation around the table as we try to grapple with navigating the landscape of the Rohina. From a Ngāti Ira perspective, will the post-settlement entity that comes into being after you go through the settlement process, will that be the representation of the iwi? Because we use those words interchangeably, iwi. Does the post-settlement entity from a Ngāti Ira perspective become the iwi?
So the entity is the entity, but it's not the iwi. So any of the resources that sit within the entity is probably what I would consider a corporate framework that enables us to be able to build ourselves and create a future that will be beneficial for all beneficiaries in Whakatoa. But that entity does not necessarily mean that it becomes the iwi, as far as I'm concerned, because we all will continue to maintain our hapiranga tiratanga. That iwi will just come with a bit of a mandate to speak on our behalf as long as our representation is clear in our voice.
Well, I'd just like to thank you very much for coming to talk to us today. This is a very important conversation for us. It's one of our strategic priorities to develop our relationship and our engagement and improve our partnerships with the iwi tapu. So thank you very much for coming to talk to us today. So we have submitted Norman, is it? Representative of the Public County Astronomical Society, this is on page 131 of your agenda papers. Is it here?
Copies as requested.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're running about 2 minutes behind. We've got a number that if you don't mind, we've got 2 minutes for you today.
10 minutes. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. My presentation here today is to urge you all to set in motion the very first steps on the journey to establish an internationally recognised dark sky reserve, not only for Whakatane, but to encompass Opariki, Ohopi, Taniatua, Edgecombe, Matata and Kawa as well, so we can join in with the likes of other already established dark sky reserves here in New Zealand and start to share the very positive benefits these areas are already enjoying. There is ample evidence of this on the internet. In every country, there is ever decreasing dark sky areas due to the constant human need to expand every town and city due to our uncontrolled population explosion. The unmistakable example of this is clearly demonstrated on the images of the once dark side of our planet you may have already seen taken from the crews of the International Space Station, showing the glowing masses of light from the towns and cities on virtually every continent, including New Zealand. All this light has been generated at a great cost to the environment by us humans, who obviously are not a nocturnal species. Here in Whakatane and the surrounding towns, the level of light pollution has grown likewise as the town has grown into the recent past, when it became apparent that the previous costly to operate sodium vapour lights were better replaced with the more energy efficient LED technology. And the changeover to the harsh new white 4,000 Kelvin lights was initiated. This pipe might be missing. I had trouble from the printing it out. The AS-NZS 1158 code is entitled Lighting for Roads and Public Spaces and was published in 2005. Lighting engineers hired by local council to install street lights have to adhere to these standards. But my personal view is that the installation of this type of lighting has been far too generous across the country. At this stage too, when car lights have never been better. These new lights and many others on the extra high poles have been installed willy-nilly everywhere with not the slightest consideration as to the amount of light that was actually required.
the amount of light beaming down to where it was not really required, and most importantly, with not the slightest consideration of the effect this light on the natural habitat that was the nocturnal life of the environment. They were able to communicate, if they were able to communicate with us, I just wonder what the message we would be getting about the blinding glare we have created from the myriads of insects, skinks, lizards, the native bats, the roos with their large eyes and dilated pupils that enables them to hunt their prey in total darkness, and the other nocturnal bird life, including the seabirds we share our planet with. All have been seriously affected by the continual erection of these lights which shine all night long just for us humans, the majority of whom in the towns and cities pull the blinds to keep the light out, to go to bed, turn off the lights by mid-evening or a bit later. How absolutely bizarre. As a result, there are many powerful lights with very poor shielding that allows the light to spill in all directions from where it is intended. This is called light trespass, and I can demonstrate this with various photos I've taken of some of the worst offenders if required. The International Dark Sky Association was formed in 1988, and to which I have belonged to for many years now, out of my deep concern as to just what's been happening globally. And as an organisation that has been campaigning for better lighting and fittings ever since, now actively promoting an array of the best type of lights and fittings to reduce the light pollution caused by us careless humans. There is a marvellous example in the South Island town of Naseby, where the authorities there, on their own common sense initiative, have embarked on a policy to replace those harsh white 4,000 Kelvin lights with a far better and warmer 2,900K and lower versions, in complete disregard to the New Zealand current lighting code, which was with a very positive outcome. I noticed a small but classic example of these cooler lights some time back when I was delayed in Tauranga for an eyesight procedure, finally leaving at 6:25 p.m. It was dark by this time, and although I wasn't driving, the lines of the harsh bright lights either side of the eastern link were relieved momentarily by 4 or 5 of the warmer lights in the middle of the eastern link on the eastern side, just as you leave the Papamar overbridge. Obviously installed at that point due to the far less blinding glare to the motorists. Take note of this whenever you drive that route in the dark hours. I recalled in one of the IDA bulletins quite some time back an article about the managers of a college in America being driven out of their wits by the constant vandalism, graffiti and damage suffered over the hours of darkness in spite of constantly increasing the lighting to combat it. In the end, out of sheer frustration, they turned off all the lights, all the nighttime lights, and remarkably ended the problem. The recent Beacon newspaper report on the same situation at our local Allendale school and the damage this is costing them is an exact replica of the bother that school in America went through, which proves that brilliant night lighting does not always bring security, as I previously stated. The factor is more pertinent nowadays with the availability of sensors to turn on any required lights to reveal any unauthorised activity that may be occurring, and can be a distinct advantage for the police, along with the advent of security cameras to record this activity. The need to have brilliant lighting in every corner all night long for security is greatly diminished. So I'm appealing to you all to really put your shoulder to the wheel and work hard in an earnest endeavour to make this happen. This is the most positive thing about this, the most positive thing about this course is that you will be creating history here for us all by putting the Eastern Bar Plenty on the International Dark Sky map. And all here in the proposed area will benefit from the immeasurable prestige that will definitely flow on as a result. Quite apart from the environmental benefits, it is our human right to be able to see as much as possible of the night skies without any interference, just as our ancestors did. And we are so lucky we live in the southern hemisphere, where by far the best view of our Milky Way, our home galaxy, to which our sun and planet belong, can be viewed, the heart of which passes high overhead in the autumn and early winter. This is a priceless attraction for all those from the northern hemisphere who are absolutely stunned whenever they finally get the opportunity to come to the southern latitudes and view the majesty of this site on a dark night for the very first time in their lives, leaving them with a lasting impact of this experience gave them. I'm one of the 2 remaining foundation members of the Whakatane Astronomical Society, founded in 1960, and our hard work right from the start enabled us to open the very first observatory in the Bay of Plenty in March 1964, which has developed significantly in the new millennium and is the longest continually operating tourist attraction in Whakatane, now in its 57th year. I'm very proud too of the recent student protest, raising quite rightly their concerns about the future of our planet. They are the ones who will be inheriting the effects. This submission is closely allied to their related efforts. Thank you, sir.
Well done. Thank you. Well done. Any questions to the whole submission?
Just quickly, thank you, Norman, thank you for that very much, and thank you for your work you do here at Whakatane with the observatory as well, because it is a real power for this town. I've been up here myself, and it's wonderful. And I actually live out in LTP, and whenever my city mates come out and stay with me, they're in awe of the night sky that they can see out there, because it is a completely different spectacle. So I just want to thank you.
And I'm yet to give a presentation to the local council, and I'll probably be in touch with the Hauraki. Originally I met Mayor Reestra at a pre-Christmas do and ran it past her, and she was quite enthusiastic about it. She encouraged me to start off with the likes of submitting proposals here, which I've done, and to the district council. So thanks to her too as well. It's been an encouragement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Hauraki Mayor's standing through that wall there now, so grab her while she's hot. Okay. Hauraki Mayor's just through the wall there now, so go and grab her.
Yes, I've heard it keep you so that you want to grab it. Oh, it's just through the wall there.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Yes, they does. Wonderful. Well done. Well done.
Great.
Thank you. Our next submitter is on behalf of.
My eyesight and hearing needs to be 3 years younger.
Got Jade, is it Jade or Antoine? Welcome, Antoine. Please take a seat.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if I can just declare for this next submission, I'm actually a trustee of Affordability.
Right.
I believe that I've got a video to share and a PowerPoint. Is able to see the video? Is okay, the video, and then I'll race to the PowerPoint because I realize you're behind. And I'm going to pick up my son to thank you.
Please, I apologise for running a bit late.
It's fine.
E hara taki poa, e taki tahi, e poa taki pini. With the NZ screen industry busier than it's ever been, Film Bay of Plenty is a sector-based economic development agency focused on promoting and growing this industry in the Bay of Plenty region. We operate as a non-for-profit trust and have a small but dedicated operational team with over 80 years collective experience in the screen media industry. This team works across the entire region and is well connected with local industry and key stakeholders like local councils. We have 5 key focuses: attracting large-scale projects like the TV series Vegas that shot in Rotorua and Western Bay into the region, which injects their production spend into the local community and over 130 associated business sectors. Film Bay of Plenty surfaces regional production inquiries from the NZ Film Commission and both local and international producers. Part of our job is marketing and facilitating access to the amazing filming locations that are all available within a relatively short travel time within our region. Film Bay of Plenty has been a key driver in establishing Stage 1 of the Waiariki Film Studios and the development of larger purpose-built facilities for the region. With a shortfall of film studio space in New Zealand and around the world, having local facilities is vital in attracting larger scale work to the region. Expansion of the film industry creates new employment. We've worked alongside MSD, MB and local iwi to deliver Earn and Learn initiatives on multiple productions and are committed to continuing this workforce development to attract and service large-scale productions. We're also active in connecting local crew with work opportunities where possible. From local grassroots no-budget short films to sponsoring and organising screenwriting groups, through to new screen media focus like animation and gaming. Assistance with the creation of local IP is a paramount focus for Film Bay of Plenty. The creation of this local IP will lead to a more sustainable industry in the long run and allow local voices to stand on the national and international stage. Within the region, we sponsor industry networking nights and events like the International Youth Silent Film Festival. Through the regional film offices of New Zealand, we're connecting the Bay of Plenty screen media industry to wider conversations and collaborations with MB, industry guilds, and the nationwide implementation of the Aotearoa Screen Sector Strategy 2030. As a member of the Association of Film Commissions International and through our wider industry connections, we connect the Bay of Plenty to wider international networks around the world. In partnership with our funders and the local industry, Film Bay of Plenty is essential to the advancement of the screen media industry's growth in the Bay. We are industry building industry. We're capitalising on the unique aspects of locations, talented crew and ease of business to bring economic growth to the region.
I do believe that video will be available. You can see in a non-Zoom version, looking a lot nicer and sounding a lot nicer. So I will, if we can switch over to the presentation, really please. Awesome. So I will, so essentially, Film Bay of Plenty is a sector-based economic development agency. They're traditionally funded by local government. We operate as a non-profit trust. As you heard, our trustees are voluntary, and as an organisation, we currently service the same geographical area as the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, with a team of 4 part-timers. It's equivalent of 1.5 full-time roles. So what's going on right now? So essentially, this Monday night, this TV series, Vegas, will premiere on TV2 and TVNZ On Demand. We're involved with initial scouts of the shoot, convincing the producers to come to the region, all the way through to some workforce development initiatives through the production. As you saw, this resulted in a $2 million spend in the local region and 110 people on payroll. There's a $1.5 million series about to start filming in Rotorua, and there's multiple series in development for the region. So there's some major productions looking to bring themselves here, and I was speaking to producers of a Netflix documentary shoot in the States yesterday, who are looking to come and shoot in Whakatane district very, very shortly. So there's a lot happening. There's a real opportunity right now. New Zealand's become a go-to place because of COVID-19 and the fact that you can operate normally here. A close friend of mine who brought a $60 million film to New Zealand had said to me, he lives in LA, he's been in lockdown there for ages, if I get back to New Zealand for production, I'm never going to leave. We've become a really hot space, and there's a real opportunity for the Bay of Plenty region to benefit from this opportunity. So essentially, the money going out into the local industry into the local community kind of goes out like octopus tentacles. You can see here, this is a breakdown, this is in amount of millions from a TV series, 800 words. But 56% goes on wages, 5% on construction materials, 3% goes on locations. You can see huge amounts of expenditure happening very, very quickly, and there's a recognised multiplier of 2 times for every dollar that production spends in a region. It catalyses ancillary businesses. There's over 130 businesses that are selected. There's no other industry that affects as many businesses. So it can be. It also brings increased use of the region's amazing filming locations, and it's got a knock-on effect of film tourism. We're looking to establish Waiariki film studios because in the middle of this content boom, there's a universally recognised shortage of stage space in New Zealand and around the world. And that will truly capitalise on the economic potential we are looking to unlock for the region. Stage 1 has been established in White Street in Rotorua, which was used for Vegas, and we're working towards the establishment of Stage 2 with financial support from Provincial Growth Fund and from Matrix. But what I really want to talk to you about today is workforce development, and that's what we're going to come to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council to ask for assistance with. We can't just build empty boxes. Alongside a shortage of film studios in the world, in New Zealand, there's a recognised shortage of film crew. So we're really focused on developing crew base as well. We've recently received $10,000 from the Bay of Connections, thank you very much, towards a workforce development initiative that's going on right now. In the series of Greenstone that I talked about earlier, we had a earn and learn opportunity called Tour Here, where we had 20 rangatahi that did a 6-week pre-training and then had a 12-week apprenticeship on the TV series. We're about to do the same thing with a TV series in Rotorua with 10 rangatahi with a 4-week pre-training and a 6-week apprenticeship. This is something we'd like to see happen on every major production that kind of comes into the Bay. It's really going to provide an opportunity. It results in job creation with wages above the national average. I'm kind of talking $1,000 to $6,500 plus per week as you move up the ranks. It increases engagement for rangatahi in a skilled technology-based creative industry. Makeup, announcing,
You looking for partners, bro?
These are high-end dancers as well. So essentially, that is my truncated talk. We're working across the Bay. As I said, we've got a very limited team. That support would be funded specifically towards workforce development in the region. And is there any questions or queries?
And I know May's application tracking with the Stevens Fund for $30,000.
Yes.
Any further questions? No?
No, Councillor McDonald was asking me where was this going to be located?
What's this?
That whole hub that we're talking about?
Rotorua.
Oh dear.
I live in another dance. I'm looking for someone to play anymore.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Next presentation, Madam Chair, declaring this, I'm actually a member of Kawerau Trails Trust, so this one out.
Welcome. Please take a seat.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and councillors. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and I hope you've had a very engaging few days of listening to some exciting developments around the Bay of Plenty, and I hope this will just only add to the list. Presenting here on behalf of the newly formed Kawerau Trails Trust, which is a charitable non-profit organisation with the aim of developing some recreational trails in the Kawerau district. Next slide, please. Oh, I've got this. Thank you.
Just point it towards me. Although here not.
Okay. Right. Never missed an opportunity to put my son on the slide, but what we're talking about are recreational trails. So this is the ability for families to go out and just enjoy the outdoors. For people who have limited limited mobility, to go out and enjoy our recreational spaces. We're not talking about hardcore mountain biking or running 100 kilometres. It's a chance for people to go out and explore local areas. Next slide. So Kawerau, many of you are familiar with the town. It's some social issues are well known, but Kawerau is a very cohesive community and with some wonderful people, and some of its physical assets and climate assets are just absolutely outstanding to become a place that can produce really world-class recreation, outdoor recreation. We've got two magnificent waterways, the Tarawera River and the Ruaranga Stream bordering the town. There's beautiful forest there, an equitable climate and volcanic soils which are absolutely superb for riding, running, mountain biking on and doing whatever. So Kawerau, the Kawerau District Council has been very much in support of this project, but we have a place and a space that truly can create some outstanding recreational resources. So this project was first initiated by the Kawerau District Council, and they have been been the governance body for the project. And just in the past few months, the governance has shifted to a new entity called the Kawerau Trails Trust. There are a number of trails trusts around the Bay of Plenty. The Rotorua Trails Trust is probably the best known. And these are groups of like-minded people with interest in outdoor recreation that administer, plan for these trails, and in some cases employ people to build and maintain the trails as well. On our governance committee, we have three different iwi landowners who are representing Ngāti Rangatihi, Ngāti Awa and Tū Wharatauā ki Kawerau. We have the Bay of Plenty Regional Council represented with our chair, Paula Chapman, our esteemed colleague Mr Clark representing Ōrepu Mountain Bike Park. The Kawerau business community is represented, Toi EDA with economic development, the Kawerau community, and also representation from the Rotorua Trails Trust. When I first started this project, which has been just over a year and a half ago, I was focused on the last point there of the financial and tourism returns for the project. The more that I've become involved, the more I've got to talk to people, my thinking has changed, and I really see how projects such as developing recreational trails do open up job opportunities. They open up opportunities for people who are unskilled or semi-skilled, and it is also a very good pathway for these people to go into future employment in either the forestry industry or in other conservation type of employment. There are large environmental benefits because as soon as you put an area that's previously the public has never been allowed to access before, and you start planning for recreation trails, you need to make sure the environment they're going to travel through is a good environment. And what we're talking about around many parts of Kawerau is a very degraded environment. So this gives us an impetus to go and improve a lot of the areas, a lot of them alongside the Ruaranga Stream and the Tarawera River. So good impetus for environmental programs. Kawerau has a very ageing community. The town was founded in the 1950s, and a lot of those people have stayed in Kawerau right up to now. So it has a large retired community. So we're conscious of those people who perhaps are not driving outside of Kawerau anymore. They want a place to walk and to walk their dogs and have gentle exercise, and we want to give them more opportunities to do so. We want to reconnect the people of those three iwi to their lands. There's a lot of those areas that you simply cannot access anymore because they're behind security fences, or there's 20 metres of blackberry higher than my head that you have to wade through to get to these locations. But there are many areas of great significance, such as the Pirimahana Scenic Reserve, that could potentially be opened up with these trails. And finally, yes, there are financial and tourism benefits by having people coming into the Kawerau area and spending on accommodation and food and other services. But the major financial benefit would actually, in the short term, be the money that would come into the district from building the trails and doing that environmental work. So the alignment with the strategic priorities of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, we want to create that healthy environment in Kawerau. We believe we already have an outstanding healthy environment, but we can make it better by opening up these areas, removing a lot of pests and increasing, doing the native planting and environmental enhancement. This would typically be for any location, anywhere from a 3 to 5 year program, removing those pest species and enhancing them. We want to create a more vibrant region. Kawerau, as you know, is a world-class industrial location, and the town has done extremely well economically and in securing central government funding for its industrial developments. We only see this recreational trail development as building on that industrial development and making it a more livable and more complete community. We're bringing our people closer together, giving them more places to access, but also in the process of building these trails and having activities such as iwi-led work days. And I was just talking to Whanatauki Kawerau this morning, and they said they would love to actually have their families go out and help clear some of these areas and have the whole whānau go out there and make that a positive family thing to do. And we've also taken a sub-regional view that all of the iwi landowners are part of the process, and that we will be engaging with the greater Kawerau community to help develop these trails. Next slide. We are a multiple stage process. Stage 1 is that yellow line right alongside the Tarawera River. We're doing these stages, basically we're doing the easy stuff first because we want to get some wins on the board, but also that yellow trail is right alongside the river, and it would be a beautiful walking trail. Stage 2 would be the around Lake Pukaparau. Stage 3 is the Ruaranga Stream and the Peremahana Scenic Reserve, taking into account a stream and a geothermal area. Stage 4 right alongside around the Tarawera River through the Tarawera Forest. And stage 5 would be the Tarawera River, and the next slide will show you the bigger picture there. All of these trails are proposed until we have landowner permissions, however, so these are not firm go-aheads. This is the grand vision. Guys, it's a sea. This is a recreational link from the Rotorua region to the Eastern Bay of Plenty. And the logical route is that red line right through the Tarawera Forest, past the Tarawera Falls, down the Tarawera River, through Kawerau, and then following the Tarawera River to Matata, which is an important route for Ngāti Rangatihi, and then either through following Rangataiki to the coast as well. There are many other trail developments. The major network in Rotorua, which has some 300 kilometres worth of recreational trails, and there are proposals with the Motu Trails, Whakatane Trails, and also Western Bay Plenty Trails connecting through to the coast as well. The grand vision is a trail network that would easily surpass the Otago Rail Trail and would become New Zealand's #1 recreational trail, because this proposal has way more going for it than Otago can ever hope to have. It's my personal bias, but that is what it is. Good on you, Paul. Next slide, please. Away and for tourism, this would encourage tourism away from the traditional hotspots. It creates more unique, personalised local experiences. It leverages existing infrastructure. Rotorua is recognised as one of the top 5 mountain biking locations in the world. It creates a brand new visitor corridor from Rotorua to the Eastern Bay of Plenty, and we have all of these unique, these natural assets in our area, and also there's a demand for cycling in the Eastern Bay of Plenty that is currently unmet. Next slide, please. The expected job numbers over the course of 5 years, we estimate 27 full-time equivalents. Small number in trail building. There's some also involved in construction of bridges, boardwalks, that sort of thing. A large number in ecological restoration, and then as the project is more mature, in maintenance of trails and also of structures. Next slide. And the economic benefits, the orange there shows the amount of spend that would come into Kawerau as a result of building trails and ecological restoration, and the grey line would be the spend in dollars, millions of dollars per year that would come as a result of visitation from the resources, the infrastructure that we have created. And last slide, please. So what we're requesting from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council is we will be looking for some financial support that can support our ecological restoration efforts in pest removal, planting and restoration, especially along that river and the Ruaronga stream. Some assistance in kind with the consenting process would be also very much appreciated. And also that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council does take a leadership role in a Bay of Plenty Regional Trails strategy. And to this last point, we have a hui tomorrow in Rotorua with about 30 people attending across all district councils and many organisations, including Bay of Plenty Regional Council there, to make the very first step in deciding, do we need a strategy for the entire Bay of Plenty, an entire regional trail strategy that takes into account not only cycling, but walking, e-bikes, running, equestrian, rocker portage, kayaking, canoeing, that sort of thing. A very inclusive approach for the whole Bay of Plenty to how do we connect this region better on foot in a non-motorised way, and how can we position the Bay of Plenty as the premium region in New Zealand for outdoor recreation.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all that your discussion. Councillors, anybody have a question? No?
I have a question. Kia ora. You mentioned just in the last piece of the report and all that, you would look to regional council to lead. Why would you look at that at themselves leading and the regional council supports that?
Well, I would like regional council, I'll put it another way, to join in the leadership of this project, essentially. So we have a number of people, as I mentioned, I think there are 5 different trails trusts in the Bay of Plenty, so it would be people from them and also from the district councils, and there's loads of sport, Bay of Plenty Department of Conservation, and regional council, walking access to New Zealand. So I think it'll be a joint leadership process of everyone there.
Just a quick question, just comment, I suppose, of the question. Your pathway from the geothermal to Matatana, will say that's a pathway from Mataroida. So the point I'm making is there'll be lots of stories that you could tell that have real cultural resonance and strength. Obviously, you've talked about that in the context of your engagement with the possibilities of all those things.
Yes, we have indeed. Yes. Yeah, and we've talked with Tuparangi and Ngāti Rangatira, Ngāti Awa, and we would be very, very excited to share those stories. And Ngāti Rangatira in particular have expressed a strong desire that connection from Lake Tarawera area to Matatana is, if we can strengthen that connection, it would be very, very important for them. So we're happy to be able to help with that.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you. Now we have our next matter is the District Council and your supporting people. Thank you. I apologise for running a little bit behind.
Socials. Yes, I'm just waiting for my presentation. Sorry, that was some reason stopped.
Oh, just what it's worth, I don't think we need to apologise for being 20 minutes behind, because last time Councillor Iki and I turned up to the hui a week early.
Did you get caught in the thunderstorm coming here?
Yes.
Okay.
That's by the time we got to August, so it was almost.
Just reversing.
Okay, so.
Kia ora koutou, fellow councillors. Thanks for having us here today. We are presenting the submission on your long-term plan, and I have Sarah, who will be leading the presentation, and Catherine from our planning department in the council, and I'll just have some comments to make at the end. Thanks.
Good afternoon. So we're not going to cover, you've got a copy of our submission, we're not going to cover off everything that we've mentioned earlier today. We're just going to focus on things that are key for our district. Planning assumptions around population, affordability, the sustainability project, and some changes we've made to rates. So firstly, the information in your consultation document suggests a significant underestimation of population growth in our district. I think you're talking about a 25% reduction by 2043. It's unclear what information you relied upon to arrive at that conclusion, but a report you can see on the screen that we commissioned recently to underpin our own LTP suggests growth. The findings of this report are supported by some recent statistics released by Statistics New Zealand in the last few weeks, which also suggest growth, and so we are asking you to revisit your assumptions around population growth in our district and update them to ensure they're accurate. Affordability, this is a map that I'm sure you've all seen before. It's deprivation across the region based on the most recent census data. It shows that our district, which is highlighted there, is the most deprived in the region, the darker red being the more deprived part. So we're definitely the most deprived district in the region, and we also know we're one of the most deprived districts in the country. When looking at the numbers, and this is kind of hard to see, we also know that approximately 89% of our ratepayers are paying more than 5% of their income towards rates, and 5% is the nationally accepted threshold for affordability, the point at which it's considered that rates are no longer affordable. Despite that, we continue to see this graph in your publications, illustrating that the regional council continues to charge the most deprived district in the region the highest rates, considerably higher rates than more affluent neighbours. It's clear, and we've highlighted in the slide, that the major contributor to this is the urban river scheme. We also understand that you operate a user pays approach, and that's great in theory. We use it ourselves, it works, but it doesn't work when the user cannot afford to pay and when the user cannot opt out. Our residents that are surrounded in the Portuguese district by the stop banks, they're not financially mobile. They don't have the ability to pick up and leave. So urban river schemes, clearly the cost driver. Let's look at it. Your current draft infrastructure strategy sets out what you're proposing to do around sustainability project, talking about flood protection, economic value, affordability, risk acceptance of risk, willingness to pay, and timing of rating reviews. These are all things that we definitely want to do, we definitely want to talk about. Sounds great. But unfortunately, we've been submitting on this now for at least a decade, and I did a bit of research before I put this presentation together, and this is just the submissions I could find in our current electronic database, so they only go back 10 years, but we know that we've been submitting on this for a lot longer than that. So in 2012, we were asking you to carry out a sustainability review. In 2013, we were congratulating you on the agreement to conduct that sustainability review, and you were acknowledging that the project had been slow to get off the ground. In 2014, you were telling us it was underway and that we'd be given an opportunity to review the report in due course. In 2015, you were talking about looking at the targeted rates in relation to the river scheme during the 15-16 financial year. 2015, you were also telling us all about what that sustainability project would involve. In 2018, you were determining the scope for consultants to complete the work. And in 2019, which is the most recent submission we made on the topic, you were telling us you were intending to commence the work in 1920. And I remember this because I was involved in the submission. Your staff came to our offices and told us categorically that the work would be done to inform this LTP. But here we are, sitting, talking about it again. Still submitting on affordability and the river scheme and rates getting less affordable. We're still awaiting information on the sustainability review. We're unclear why it's been delayed and we don't know when it's going to take place and when it will be completed. And despite this, ratepayers are also being told that they're no longer allowed to rely on the stock banks when they're undertaking redevelopment proposals in our district. So I've got a little example of this. As a council, as a ratepayer, we are currently redeveloping a property on our high street. This is a 2-storey commercial development that's being funded through the Provincial Road Fund. We just did a survey recently that shows existing floor levels on the property at 2 metres, just over 2 metres moderate datum. And a letter that we've received from the Regional Council in the last few weeks recommends a floor level of 3.6 metres, which is 1.6 metres above the existing ground level. So here's a picture of my toddler running along our high street, and that stripy line you can see is the floor level that you're recommending to us. It's physically impossible to achieve. It renders the Te Township undevelopable. It's our view that it's not appropriate to charge ratepayers to maintain stock banks that they cannot rely upon. So where to from here? We're asking you to please fulfil your commitment to review affordability and involve us in that review. Speak to us about it, talk to us and our ratepayers about what it means. Prioritise the sustainability review you've been talking about for years. Let's do it now and let's inform where we go next. Provide your LTP and associated documents to make clear how affordability and ability to pay have been considered, because to us it's not clear how that's been taken into account. And if required, revise your financial strategies to ensure that the future well-being of our district is protected and provided for. And one more thing, we understand this isn't in your LTP, and this is something that we understand from talking to your staff recently, but that you're making changes to allow yourself to collect your own rates. We haven't been consulted on this, nor have our community, and this has significant repercussions for us. For our ratepayers to the tune of potentially a 1% rate rise, and to all the other districts in the region that currently collect rates on your behalf. We're going to distribute a letter right now that sets out the detail of why we think it's of the details that you need to think about before you make this decision, and the reasons why we think you need to consult. But we just encourage you today to fully understand and engage with the implications of the changes we're proposing, and think really hard about whether or not you ought to be consulting the community about this decision before you do so. Thanks very much. That's me. Thank you.
Kia ora. Question. I very much understand the situation around the river rates and the rationale behind it. But looking forward, with your population growth, yes, because we are sure that the demographic there is presented by the council is not correct. When the mussel farm comes on stream, generating what would hope to be significantly higher than a living wage in that town, make any difference to the affordability of rates in wider Opotiki district?
First off, most of the people who are having affordability live within the lower part of town. And they're on fixed incomes, mainly pensions. And at the moment, we know there's at least 550 households who are way over not affording or getting very close to not affording their rates within our town. What we're trying to do is within our own long-term plan is to look to start directing development higher up, so that we're taking into account climate change and moving uphill, etc. So there there is a line within our town where development is reasonably safe because it's more uphill, if that makes sense. And we know from some of the information that we've been gained from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council that our midtown to north towards the sea, we're going to be okay for at least the next maybe 50, 60 years. But we are working towards changing the focus as to where our housing development will be. However, what we do need right now within our housing strategy is infill housing. We need people with the very long sections to be putting another house there because we're so desperately short of houses. And I know that will increase our rate base, and we're working towards trying to get to 57 within the town, but not necessarily within the lower town, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Not entirely, but that is a very good actual overview of the Affordability plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the one thing that we need to think about is how long we have been asking, and it is more than a decade, how long we have been asking the same information from the regional council. And really for us to be moving forward in all of the right directions in this long-term plan and further, especially looking at our 30-year infrastructure plan, we need this information from the regional council around the viability and sustainability. And I have sat in council for 6 years and heard those promises that we would have the report this year and we would have the report this year so that we could actually start. And we had hoped 2 years ago that we would have the information before we could start this long-term plan procedure. And we still haven't got there. And we kind of feel like, yes, we are the further east, and so therefore we get left to last in all of those types of projects from where we need this information. We really need the regional councillors to think about the effects of what's happening to us in that area with our affordability issues, definitely our affordability issues, but also the information we need to be planning to work towards correcting those.
Can I ask you what your position is as a council towards spatial plan, regional spatial plan? Because we are seeing that that's where the government's going to go with it. Repeal of the RMA, and it's going to have a new spatial planning act, which, as I understand it, is going to push for us to develop these regional spatial plans.
Yes, certainly.
So what's your position? Are you doing your own spatial planning for Affordability and the future of that? And what's your position about working together with the rest of the region?
Well, I was on the committee for the Eastern Bay of Plenty that worked and sat and developed the Eastern Bay spatial plan at the time when the rest of the Bay of Plenty had started and then stopped, and we continued and put ours forward. We're hoping that we will be able to review it and update the Eastern Bay plan. I'll get Sarah to fill in more on that too.
Just to comment on that as well, our council at the moment is completely focused on delivery. We've got 12 months of epic delivery. So in the short term, we don't want to be thinking about those big regional, we don't have the capacity to take on those big regional issues at the moment. We are looking at some of the topics within the spatial plan at a district level, like housing. We are progressing those issues at a district-wide level because we think that the answer is partially in a district response. But spatial planning at the regional level is for us something that needs to be put on the back burner until we've delivered these major infrastructure projects we've got going on.
Thank you. And before I ask Councillor Rose, just one more question from me. I noticed that you guys put a regional safety rate,
rescue
and safety rate, lethal rate. Sorry, I've also got tongue here. I'd love to understand why. Do you fund rescue services in the Bay of Plenty yourselves?
It's not that we don't support it. I think the submission was more getting, trying to get the point across that the options that have been presented to the community weren't clear, what the different levels of service were. So I think it's really hard for us to respond to a consultation document that doesn't make, where the information's just not there really to enable us to really have a view. I think that was the point.
But I do know that the district council does support quite a few of the different types of programs and organisations that are within our district. Like WSU, like
legal economy,
what we can afford,
yeah, okay.
which is very little. On an ongoing basis, I'm sorry, and really it does get down to that for us.
Yeah, Your Worship and staff. Look, I just wanted to ask, who you've said that the amount of rates that the Portuguese ratepayers are paying, in particular for the rural scheme, is unaffordable. So who would have to pay for that instead of the ratepayers within that area?
Well, we've talked about this a few times with staff. There's a few options. I mean, we would like you to look at the distribution of rates across the whole region. You know, it's difficult because you generally are using a user-pays approach. But we've also talked about other things like the fact that the conservation estate makes up a lot of the catchment. How can we work together to leverage some additional funding from central government to step up around that? But we just haven't really been able to sit down and have a proper conversation with you about it. We've never really, the numbers that we're seeing now are only recent numbers that we've been starting to.
And so is this you guys saying you're open to having that discussion over the coming months?
We've been asking for a very long time around affordability.
Councillor Brandon.
Yes, good to see you, Lynn. The River Advisory Group, there, you have two councillors on that, and
Yes,
that's where the rates are. So are you getting the information via those councillors?
Yes.
Back to you, so you're aware of what's going on, and the debt that's on that scheme, yeah, and the sustainability issues around it.
Yeah. Right. We don't necessarily have answers. We just we need those conversations.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to thank you for that clearest exposition I've ever seen of all the problems which you face in the postcode. From my work down there, I fully realise how difficult it is for you and how you are not in a position with your staff, with the small staff that you've performed, to do all these bits and pieces. And ever since I've been a councillor, I've always been worried about the inequity between having this lowest or the poorest council paying the highest amount of rates, and I fully understand for the user reasons why. But I think it is one of the things which we do have to examine for the future. I'm sorry that we've taken so long to complete the study. I think we really do need the staff. I don't know if the staff can comment on why there has been a delay, but we really do need to complete that and help work with you for the days and the years ahead.
Thank you.
All right, well, we perhaps will have that discussion with staff in our deliberation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think now we move on to Pakistani, District Council. Welcome.
Thank you for welcome. I'm just going to make a couple of introductory comments. First, I just want to acknowledge the work that you do in our district. We're very grateful and for the collaboration that's on the increase, and particularly grateful for your support in with us around Affordability. It's been a very long and painful journey for everybody, but we appreciate you being with us towards the end of that process, so thank you very much. We're pretty strongly in favour of the general direction which you're heading and that under the long-term plan. You'll be aware, and we're very keen on the strong focus towards climate change. We are treating that as urgent and have taken some quite major steps ourselves in terms of policy development and action plans for ourselves as a district, but certainly collaboration is going to be a stronger point if we do it together. I'm just going to hand over to Stephanie Sullivan, our CE, and Nicholas to just take you through the main points of our submission.
Tēnā koutou, ki te rangatira mā o te kainatira o tui moana, tēnā koutou. The councillor, Nays, tēnā koe, to you, and just to acknowledge our councillors, Bill and Toy, for the continued work that you do with us and our communities here in the Eastern Bay. So, me nui kia kōrero, and te Minister, tēnā koe. So I just want to acknowledge our Deputy Mayor Andrew Iles, who's here with us today and support. We really appreciate the Regional Council coming to us and presenting LTP and us through that just recently, and thought that it was a really useful time and have considered since then how we might even do more of that. So on that basis, we're here today, and I want to support what Judy said in terms of our overall focus. And we've got 4 key areas to focus on today. So we'll take our submission as read, and obviously be open for any questions at the end. But I guess I want to reiterate what our Judy has said in terms of the ongoing support and collaboration. We particularly want to say thank you for the funding application support over the last year from the Regional Council, when we have in the last 18 months actually to the Provincial Growth Fund and the Crown Infrastructure Partners. I think it was really important that the region stood up together, and we felt strongly supported by the Regional Council through those processes, so thank you. And I want to also reiterate the partnership approach that we've taken with our Tamariki managed retreat process. That's been a significant project, acknowledging the stress and concern it's caused in that community over a very long period of time. But the outcome, I think, is one that's testament to the Department of Internal Affairs, Regional Council and ourselves. And of course, we'll now look at that in terms of the model going forward. So I think it's really important we start off on that basis, and want to acknowledge Councillor Chairman Doug Leader and New Zealand Executive Governor McTavish for their strong support in many of these key projects. We want to talk today about spatial planning, regionally significant projects, our mayoral forum, and the consultation document question. So if I may just lead out with spatial planning, we really appreciate the work that we're already doing in that space and the collaboration around spatial planning. And amongst everything else that's going on in our respective worlds, the RMA reform is obviously pointing to the spatial planning reform and instigation, and so it's clearly on the horizon. This is the work we need to be doing. We're already in partnership with yourselves and Kawerau District to start thinking about these issues, and the importance of placemaking for our growing communities that are significantly impacted by challenges such as climate change and natural hazard resilience is going to be absolutely critical, not least of where people live, how they live, and do we create great places for people to work, to live, work and play, where their health and education facilities are going to be, and how they move around. So therefore it needs to be a collaboration, we think, not least of all between ourselves as local government, but also Waka Kotahi, the District Health Board and Ministry of Education as key central government players. So that regional approach to planning for significant growth and regeneration is really important, and we total what has been indicated in your long-term plan. It's also critical to identify regionally significant infrastructure, and Chairman Doug raised that when you came and spoke to us, and we think this is a really important conversation for the region to be having, and it will require ongoing support and collaboration and working together in the best interests of the Bay of Plenty as well as the Eastern Bay, and identifying what is regionally significant infrastructure and what are the game changers. So if we think about the impact that we're all trying to achieve through our respective long-term plans and collaboratively. I think that is probably, we think that's one of the big game changers for the next 10 to 20 years. And while all that's going on and we are considering what that might look like and doing our spatial planning work, there are significant projects already underway within our district, and we've indicated clearly that the next project, one of the next big projects for us, will be around finding a solution for the Ngashita wastewater issue. This community has not only lived without a Taranaki management treatment process, but they continue to live without a wastewater solution. And this is, Ngashita will be a focus for population growth and economic development. Ngāti Rangatihi have obviously recently gone through the treaty settlement process, and we're very concerned about that community, as I know you are. So we are going to require a collaborative partnership approach to that, and that one that will ensure affordability for the community. So we've indicated an investment there of about 7 million that we would look to in years 3, 4 and 5, I think, for look to Nicholas, and we have $6.7 million on the table from the Ministry of Health, and we're looking to put in somewhere in the vicinity of 4 million ourselves, which discounts the money we've already spent to date on exploration. But we do need to realise the joint objectives that we have around safety for both people, place and our environment through that project. So I guess that's a plea to us as we think about the more regionally connected issues. There are some place-specific issues that we do need to resolve. I guess the context for that as we move forward will be around Three Waters reform, and that will significantly affect, I mentioned regional council as well as us, particularly stormwater comes into the mix. But as we move through RMA reform and Three Waters reform and waste management reform processes in the next 3 to 5 years, the collaborative approach amongst us will be increasingly important. So on that basis, we strongly support the 3 priorities that have been identified through the Mayoral Forum. Housing, and we've just been listening to Mayor Lynn speak about the housing projects underway at Opotiki. Housing is a significant issue in the Whakatane District Council across the entire spectrum, both supply, demand, kinds of housing need, social inequity, social inequality, and the resultant issues around poverty, child poverty, gang violence, drug and alcohol abuse. All of this is leading to systemic issues, unemployment. We are trying to address those obviously through our Provincial Growth Fund projects, creating great jobs here in the Eastern Bay, jobs that might keep our young people here in good employment, that's, more than a living wage. But I think some of these more wicked and systemic issues need all of us to apply our minds to. And in fact, we're not so great at putting our case in that space because we actually don't even have the data. I'm really interested to hear the recent cases out of Rotorua, and Mayor Stevie Chadwick doing a great job there of advocating for their district. We unfortunately in the East don't even have robust data to be able to tell our story to start with, so that's an issue that perhaps we could work on together. And then the final issue being climate change, and this is such an important focus of your long-term plan, and we strongly support it. We want to Cashy Ford, our strategic policy leader, is not with us today because she's in the thick of the audit process with LTP, but she has been leading with the adult support of our councillor Nani Tanshos, a big group, and we've obviously put our climate change framework together. Want to continue to work with you and indicate some areas that we'd like to do more of with you in our submission. So we want to advance those climate change initiatives. We are some of the most vulnerable places and communities in New Zealand, and having already been through vulnerabilities, we've learned lessons, but our communities need to be ready. And I guess my final point, Councillor Lees, is that we need to balance everything with significant affordability issues that reside within our communities across our district. And again, Mayor raised that in her discussion earlier. We have significant deprivation indices in our community and across the communities, and all of this work we know we need to do, but there's just an affordability issue, whether it's resolving wastewater issues, whether it's building resilience and climate change, housing. That affordability issue continues to be something that I think collectively we as local government need to be sound advocates for to central government on as well. So I think I'll leave it there and happy to take questions on any of those issues or any of the points of our submission.
I just want to let you both a very strong submission. I firstly want to recognise the good great work that you've been doing in the climate change space and the progress that you've made. I think it's very exciting. I'm sure we all want to get a strong mandate. So councillors, we've got Councillor Eki and Councillor Clark.
Madam Chair, tēnā rā koutou, tēnā koe te rangi sika me Judy, and me koe Steph. Thank you for your presentation, and I do have a couple of questions. I'm sure Councillor Gavin Dennis is very happy that this is getting progressed, the Matata wastewater project. But my question regarding that, if you're placing it into your LTP and considering the aging population of Matata, are you looking at it paying for it via targeted rates, or spreading it through the district?
So I think one of the first issues I just want to clarify, and sorry, Nicholas was just talking about this before, was that there's still a degree of uncertainty around that project, because obviously we're trying to lead a co-design approach to the project and the issues that will resolve. And at the moment we are looking at a site-specific or location-specific land-based solution for that community, and co-designing that with iwi. And so at the moment, there's still a lot of uncertainty around that project, but we really support the fact that Sarah Munson is on our steering group and fully engaged in the project. So that's been some background that some councillors might appreciate. And then look to Nick in terms of the rating.
Yeah. I was just going to say that we've taken some of these projects would not be affordable for the communities that are benefiting from the fact that it was targeted to them. So with things, what we do with wastewater is that we have always it's paid for by all the communities that enjoy the same service. So anybody anybody else that's on a reticulated sewage system and has already got the benefit of that will be also contributing to that. That's how we're making it for you.
Thank you for that. And thanks. My other question was regarding noting and acknowledging that you have a new general manager, tier 2 staff member for Māori partnerships.
Yes.
Which is great, and that is certainly a strategic priority for us as well. And just wanted to ask how you envision working also with the regional council in that space, because we share a lot of the same challenges, and it is a very challenging space. So I just would like to get your feedback on that as well.
I think it's a really good point, Councillor Eti, and we do share relationships with the same people, with the same iwi partners, and although we are legislatively geared towards working on different issues, they're always related, and our communities expect us to work together as one government. And I think that the appointment of Paul Warwick as our Waihotu Māori is a really significant development for us, and I'm really excited about that. I think councillors are too, and I think we just want to work more closely with you, get more strategic with you, and then think about the relationship that we have with Te Arawhiti in terms of the Crown Māori relationship, lead out of central government, because I think their participation in many of these issues would be helpful. So, but it's about having strong local relationships, and I think if our Māori liaison teams are working closely together, that will be a good thing for all parties.
Thank you.
Following up to Councillor Ekis, but certainly in my capacity, out on the Rangitangi, the Matata sewage scheme and seeking really some, I know you can't provide it with certainty around direction, timelines around that, will be of great benefit to me, to the council, and to me personally. And even this morning, one of the Matata landowners got in touch with me about the uncertainty about what is probably going to be taken over by the council and the rating concerns, et cetera, around that. Going back to 2007, when I started in WDC, wasn't the agenda there. So, yeah, crystal ball, yeah, we'll do our best. But please keep us in touch with that work.
We will, Councillor Clark, and obviously since the last iteration of this attempt to find a resolution, regional council's policy statements have changed as well, and the bar has risen, and we need to be compliant with your policies, and particularly the coastal policy statement, and we're very mindful of that. I was talking about that with Nicholas, who's leading this project for us, and you know that I guess we would look to you to partner with you to make sure that we're on the right track, and for that reason, I just repeat that we're really pleased that Sarah is on the steering group and is able to provide that direction and guidance for us, because these are increasingly complex and challenging projects for us all, and we know we're not the only community that you have worked with on these specific issues, and you've got a large coastal community. So we look forward to working with you on that, Councillor Clark, and hopefully this time we'll get there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and presenting to us today. We really appreciate it. We'll be deliberating in due course. So we look forward to getting back to my submission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, we are running a little bit behind. If you indulge us, we'll just run straight through. So our next submitter is Aidan Johnson, submitter 396, and we just find that petition on the 29. Hayden, please take a seat. Yours.
Thank you very much for having me speak today. A couple of items to speak to regarding the long-term plan. One of them is something that came to the fore just recently, and it was something that I looked at and realised that we don't actually have a plan in the event of a tsunami. Once we have a tsunami, what is our recovery plan? Is there been any consideration? Do we have a plan? What I've looked at so far, I've been able to find anything substantive that we do as a community, as Survivor Bay of Plenty, as a Wattane District Council. There isn't anything there to help us recover in this situation. While I understand that a tsunami event is going to be a nationwide or relatively nationwide event, that's going to require central government involvement. It's also going to require a lot of involvement from the local communities. If we don't have a plan, then what are we going to do? There's going to be a lot of people running around wanting to know what they are supposed to do with themselves, how they recover, how we clean up, and the likes. It's a consideration that I feel that needs to be put into a long-term plan to understand and let our communities understand what our governors are doing to help protect them and look after them in the event of such an event. How that looks, I don't particularly know, to be honest, but it's something that we need to consider and discuss and open the books. I understand the difficulties in it. If you become responsible, and you become responsible for protecting people from it also. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that that's the path that needs to be followed. It's a path of recovery and how we do that. How do we find resources that are going to be spread throughout the country? We're not going to be able to obtain resources from other areas because they're going to want their own resources. So what do we have within our own communities, and how do we make that all happen?
Excellent. So we do have a civil defence emergency arm, not looking at anybody here, that has a responsibility for group response. So I'll pass it over to Councillor, who might be able to make a comment or ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. I'm chairman of the Civil Defence Emergency Group for Bay of Plenty, and the whole question of St Harmony is hugely complicated. And as you say, the recovery or the remediation is really dependent on how widespread that issue becomes. And whilst there are sort of broad-scale plans in place for evacuation, for immediate response, actually dealing with the long-term effects is certainly going to be one which is going to exercise the government, and I think will be government-led, rather than by locally, not by ourselves. So I'm not going to try to fob you off. In fact, I am going to go back to the civil defence group itself and ask them that question. But really, you're asking a question about how long is a piece of string. And it really does just depend on what damage is done. Just to reassure you to a certain extent, I did ask, we had a presentation at the CDMG from Lima, and I did ask them a question, and they were talking about tsunamis, and I said, well, when did we last suffer a tsunami? And they said, oh, we have a couple every year. I said, no, not the 1 metre one, the 10 metre one. And they said, well, we think we had one 700 years ago. So in all risk management, you have to base the preparation and the defence against the likelihood of the risk. So I'm not trying to underestimate risk, because even if it was one in 700 years ago, if it happens tomorrow, it's going to be devastating. But I won't say, if we take the extreme, we don't plan about what happens when a meteorite hits us. And it scales down from that to a fire is far more likely, or an earthquake is far more likely. So yes, we do consider all these things. I think the answer you're looking for is probably impossible to assess, but I'm going to go back and ask the question.
I accept what you're saying, that the risks involved and everything else, but we have the plan at the front end currently. I was involved with developing the emergency management plan for our area. So we have that emergency management plan. We are already planning for that event that is unlikely to be 700 years away, because I'm sure we're all aware of what the numbers are, right, and the risks involved. So we're not looking at saying it's not going to happen for another 700 years potentially. We're already planning for an event that's likely to happen sometime in the relatively near future.
I would say there's a possibility, not a likelihood.
Thank you, Amy, for your submission, and I know that you've answered some of our consultation questions also, so we appreciate that. So you've given us something to think about and something to ask staff about, and we'll get back to you with due course.
Sure. Just in one situation, one of the questions asked there was, I've only just recently had my children finish their schooling, and we transported them to school pretty much their entire schooling careers. Okay, it's been a rural community in this area. That's a lot of traffic. That's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of people that do exactly what we've done throughout our entire careers. I think a bus service that supply a much improved service than what we currently have, which is basically based on the Department of Education restricting how people travel within school buses, within zones, becomes very restrictive. If you're not going to one particular college you want to go to another, you have to put the kids in the car and you have to drive them to school. Or other people have done is personally subsidise minibuses and the likes to make that happen. Just on carbon emissions alone, an improved school bus service would be a huge improvement for our community, regardless of the reduced traffic on the roads. We all know what it's like. I mean, during the school holidays, how much less traffic there is, and whether it be in Tauranga or Waltani, Auckland's, it reduces the traffic considerably. So, a free bus service that actually took people from their homes or very close to it to the schools, a more distributed service than what's currently on offer now, would have to be a significant improvement for our entire community and economy. Things like Wakatani, for instance, we've got a bridge which everybody in Wakatani complains how bad it is. Tauranga is, I did work in Auckland and Tauranga and everything else. I understand it's not that bad. But if you took that school traffic away from there, if you had a centralised drop-off point outside of there, and a bus service that ran in and out of Wakatani just to supply the schools, you've got to help negate some of the need and the requirement for a new bridge on the traffic management side, not the safety side, of the traffic management side, and make the community a better place as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your time. We'll get back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, that's fine.
And now, Tim Ramsdale. So councillors, that's page 12. Welcome, Tina. Please take a seat. The floor is yours.
Hi, I'm a local farmer. I own a property on the Kobe Canal. I mentioned in my submission that it's currently still contaminated with aflatoxin. And I just want to make sure it's still on the table, the potential remediation of it. I commented on climate change. Storage is obviously crucial to prevent flooding and storm surges, and at present that canal cannot be dredged, and it hasn't been dredged for a number of years, so basically the storage is decreasing because of that, which is obviously the opposite of what needs to happen. I also think another sort of solution to flooding, and we, like both councillors, Whakatane District Council and Waihi District Council have talked about the effects of climate change and how unaffordable our river schemes are. And I agree, I pay rates that are significant to farm where we farm. And I feel a good solution to that would be to incentivise farmers to put wetlands onto their properties. If we even got 5% of farms in wetland, their storage capacity would be significant, the biodiversity would be phenomenal, it would create jobs, it would create like recreational, educational opportunities. We're like pushing our planetary boundaries, something chronic with climate change, biodiversity loss, nitrogen and phosphorus, fresh water, wetlands mitigate all of that. They add a sponge to the environment. They create habitat for our endangered species. I think it would be a great option for council to look at somehow incentivising farmers to put some wetlands onto their property, which would help increase the storage capacity of our drainage scheme. But yeah, that also, yeah, that's basically all I had to say. I'm quite nervous about living on the Kofi Canal as well. If that breached, it's not, sorry, if it broke, that stop bank, that contamination risk of dioxins is no longer contained. It's spread all over my farm, which is organic. And it is also spread probably all over our neighbours' farms, which once it's out, it's quite a health. So I just feel it's been forgotten about a little bit since that first project was done.
I can assure you that we still monitor that project, so we haven't forgotten about it. Thank you, some really good ideas there we can build in our thinking going forward. Councillor Clark.
Slightly statement, Tina. Loved the second part of your statement about the wetlands. But a wise old bird in the background, he's supporting a Brian here, who understands the situation there. And yeah, we would, if we could, believe me, it's a political potato, the Kobe Canal, and if the opportunity does arise, I'm sure we will take advantage of it, but it is a very hard basket, not that you hard basket, a very hard basket at this stage, but at the second stage, but lovely concept of your wetlands, absolutely.
What about filling it in? That contains it.
Do come to our next River Advisory Group and carry the conversation with Brian. We'd love to hear you.
Any other questions? No, well, yes, Councillor Khan.
I just what would it alleviate confusion in any way if you were able to provide you information around our monitoring results so that you're keeping abreast of what we're finding?
We've had access to them. We've been showing like what's been found and they've found so far.
So is it helping or does it make it worse?
It's there, right? Like you know it's there. So it's a toxin that you can't get rid of. There's gills in that canal that it, probably contaminated with it, spreading into other areas of the Whakatane area, like it was going to climb over stocklinks and stuff into other canals.
So have you been able to have conversations with our staff, what you told us today, along the same lines of what you've done to us today? Have you had the opportunity to speak with staff?
We have spoken with some staff,
Thank you very much for appreciate it. Thank you. Now we have Linda comment across the Eastern Bay, and Linda, I do apologise, we are behind time. Thank you for waiting. So we look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Top of the list is climate change, you won't be surprised to know, and public transport is one of the most significant areas where the council can actually make a difference in terms of emissions reduction, which is what we really need to be doing, and especially in Tauranga, and we fully support the greater investment in public transport. Briefly looking at the consultation questions, we support funding a subset of the different options. We think that a climate change forum, it sounds good, but would it just be a talk fest or would it actually achieve something? But we think it wouldn't achieve as much as investing in facilitating community conversations and supporting businesses. We're not sure what bullet one involves, but if it's about coordinating territorial authority responses in the region in terms of better spatial planning for climate change, that would be really helpful, and I think we've just heard that from the Community Council. Regarding renewable energy and energy efficiency, branch supports option 4 because it enables a just transition. We are concerned though that if a similar scheme is implemented, criteria need to exclude new builds, which should be addressed through national building codes rather than regional councils, and suburbs with above average median income. So we think it really should be focused on lower socio-economic areas, especially in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, which to echo Potoki there sometimes feels that it's been bypassed. So subsidising free transport for students makes absolute sense. We've heard about that, I won't say anything more about it. And a flat fare structure sounds like a really good way to assist community card holders. Now, just want to say a little bit about rail. In the last long-term plan submission, we did raise this issue about having investigation of rail for commuting transport from the new growth areas around Tauranga, and it was really interesting to discover on your website and your little question and answer session, which I commend you for, that there has been a report done, albeit one that was fairly narrow. So I guess we just urge you to think long term and start now to plan for some kind of rail transport from these high density population areas. And please learn from Auckland that don't keep putting it off because it just gets harder and more expensive. But we do commend you for what you're doing in the public transport and climate change area. It's really good to see. Turning to the other activities, we are disappointed there was a lack of any invitation to people to actually comment on anything else apart from those 7 questions. And nevertheless, we did go into that. And the regional parks issue is surely one that would have benefited from a consultation question. We note that the population growth is both contributing to the loss of natural areas and putting pressure on existing natural areas. And given climate change and inevitable sea level rise and storm surges, Consideration should be focused on purchasing coastal land at risk to avoid it being built on. And this is linked to biodiversity protection. We note that the coastal margin features significantly in the priority aimed at biodiversity ecosystems and sites. Shorebirds throughout the region are now threatened not just by pests and human disturbance, but by increased storms and loss of high tide roost and nesting sites. Forest and Bird would like to see the coastal biodiversity activity broadened to the formation of new shell bands and sand spits to provide for shorebirds, and coastal parks could facilitate this. Just relating to your key projects, we would like the council to review its coast care and estuary care programs and combine them in a broader, more integrated focus. Coast care is primarily about restoring dunes, which is a worthy activity, but with a narrow focus. Estuary care retains a key activity of removing mangrove seedlings subject to demand from residents. We do note that some priority biodiversity sites have resource consents for mangrove removal applying to them. We acknowledge that some care groups have moved on from mangrove removal to more substantive biodiversity restoration, but there is a gap in taking action for urgent climate change adaptation, and we think that integrating these two project areas could have wider benefits. And after all, your department is called Integrated Catchment. So we're not saying that it's going to click your fingers and be wonderful, but we're just saying, hey, go away and have a think of this because it might have some broader benefits. You'll be aware that Forest and Bird has got a particular interest in pest management and aware of the government funding coming into the region for a number of projects. But it's now clear that there are unintended consequences from the wide-ranging pest control being undertaken. With reduced rat numbers, all bird populations, whether native or exotic, are increasing, and they're spreading more weed seeds. And there are fewer rats present to eat these weed seedlings. Now, I think this is something that you might already be aware of, but if you're not, I think it's something that we really have to build into our thinking. It kind of is a bit counterintuitive sometimes. So, following on from this sort of concept of what is actually happening, we think that in the Eastern Bay anyway, there aren't enough council staff dealing with serious weed threats. Forest and Bird branch in the Eastern Bay of Plenty is investing significant funding and tens of thousands of dollars over the last decade or more for weed control in the scenic reserves in Whakatane. Now, we do understand that the biosecurity staff, or the former biosecurity staff, are now working as land management officers on a broader front. But we still need people to liaise with individual landowners where there are weed issues, and just feel free to drive up Forge Road at the moment and you'll see the ginger being very prevalent because it's in flower. That needs to be just dealt to before the seeds mature, and then you're just increasing the problem. So now, that's the good stuff. A few little complaints from me, I'm sorry. We noted with interest that the performance target of 100% of proposed plan changes and other policy statements agreed through the council approved policy with blah, 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 I won't read it all, are notified, agreed without substantive changes. Now, to me, I know you're looking for performance targets and maybe timeliness is one, but timeliness and consultation don't necessarily go together. And unless you've done a really good job at your pre-consultation before you notify something, you can't expect that something will go through unopposed or unchanged, because to me, that's predetermination, and you know that that's not a good thing and you should be doing it. So that might have been some unfortunate wording, I'm not sure, but it didn't go down too good. And so this leads me on to I personally was on the periphery of the litigation that's gone on over the last 10 years with the Regional Coastal Environment Plan. And I truly believe that a lot of the litigation and the damage to relationships could have been avoided or at least truncated if the council hadn't tried to curtail and deflect the submitters. And we do hope you've learned lessons from this, because it's had a very good outcome in the long run, but it's taken so long and it was so bitter and, well, it was litigious. And I don't think that's had a good outcome for other projects and for other things that the same people might get into. So I really do hope you've reflected on that. And I say this just as a personal comment, really, because I was involved in that process. I'm not saying that the council was personally, that I personally was affected by it, but it was just my observations because I was involved on the periphery. And finally, the public notification, and there's been a bit of email traffic on this with the staff and the chief executive. The media campaign for this long-term plan almost totally bypassed our branch. Forest Review pays for a national service of environmental consultations that are publicly notified. This particular consultation only appeared in that service a few days before submissions closed, which is why this branch was the only one to submit, because the other branches didn't have time to get the submissions in within a couple of days. There may have been a problem with the notification service, I don't know that, but I do know that it wasn't in any of the earlier, there's a weekly notice. But the council has got extensive databases of stakeholders, and I don't know why the council didn't just send out an email to all of its stakeholders advising them that the LTP was open in consultation and when the closing date was. That might have taken 10 minutes of one staff member. The other media that you did, your other engagement, that's all great. I'm happy with that. No one could criticise it. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, oh, we want to hear from different people, but actually we don't want to hear from the people who just do watch the public notices. So please, and I've just put down the little legal bit at the end, which you can read, but our legal advisors and your legal advisors are saying completely different things. I just invite you to go and read the Local Government Act yourself online and see what it says. It's really clear. A statement of the period within which views may be provided to the local authority, the period being not less than 1 month from the date of statement is issued. And so I shall leave it there. I'm sorry to be grumpy over this, but when you find out you've only got 3 days to put in a submission, it makes you grumpy.
Thank you, Linda. Very thorough presentation as always. Councillors, if you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I actually was poised to ask the question about not what was in your submission, but what was missing from it, or what it expected you. But you've actually sort of got us all a bit mind, a bit shame, because if that was all the timeline you've given to actually present submissions, you've done it incredibly well. But on your rats eating seeds, is the glass half empty and half full? I was just up in the reserve this morning at Karaponga marvelling at the pest control and all the regeneration that was coming away because it killed the rats. So maybe just...
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, Councillor, I'm just saying we have to watch for the other side of it as well.
To understand, yeah.
Further questions? I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today.
I think you took cover of this.
which is starting with councillors, we've got two further submissions, they're both on Zoom. So we've got Mia Bennett, page 1015, and then Ray Southern, and his is on page 402. So we now welcome Pia. Hello, Pia.
I'm sitting in my vehicle outside of Te Puke McDonald's, where I've just sent my kids in there to get a clay while I do this Zoom presentation of my LTP stuff. So this submission has cost me a big feed of McDonald's for 3 hungry and sorry, my visual's not very good. But thank you for your time and for allowing me to be a bit of a hoha to staff to get me a slot after being a bit crook. But I'm here now. So I just wanted to impress on council. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
The main point I wanted to impress on the council is pretty clear in my submission. It's about equity and achieving equity, the things that one must do and one must be aware of when striving to make equitable decisions. I opened my email after being ill since Sunday night. I opened my email a day ago, and if I could just share with you what my life is like as an RMA practitioner for an iwi, the range of emails that are sitting in my inbox unanswered, and just if you could try to put yourself in my shoes and whether evaluate whether one person can do the job that we do. So this is just my experience. So I've got one from the Environment Court. I've got one about a contract that I'm overdue and reporting for. That's actually a regional council, some small funding that the council granted us. We're in our last year of that. I've got methyl bromide reassessments with the EPA. I've got the Wairoa River strategy. I've got wastewater overflows. I've got submissions for Tauranga City Council acquisitions and disposal policies. I've got a resource consent. I've got the alert about the contaminants in the groundwater at Whareroa. I've got marine oil spill response. I've got expressions of interest about sitting on different boards. I've got the Kaimai Mamaku, Manaki Kaimai Mamaku Trust information. I've got Ngāti Kahu presentation to commissioners on the 15th. I've got a Omanawa meeting about development happening in Omanawa, Kaimai Ranges. I've got the managed retreat kaupapa. I've got an email from Gail about water. I've got iwi consultation. I've got Tauranga City Plan. I've got a waiata wānanga that I will never get to, and I never can get to. They're held weekly by our whānau, our real unit, and I can never attend because I don't have the time to attend. I've got a meeting with my managers tomorrow, and I've got a meeting with my boss tomorrow. I've got docs, project coordinator stuff. I've got more worker stuff. I've got the port wanting me to meet with them. And the list goes on. I haven't even finished. That's just from 3 days. 3 waters, another different environment court issue, climate change, the High Court of Appeal about Otakiri, managers report due, Mercury decision out, so heaps and heaps. That's what my life looks like. And I doubt that anyone goes to university to get a degree in science, law, policy, planning, te reo Māori, mātauranga, taxi driving, and the likes. That's just a couple of days in my life. I'm employed for 26 hours a week. You saw my submission, how many hours I work. I actually think that the reason I was sick was because I actually did burn out. I don't know any other reason for being sick. I was not around anyone sick, and it was a real bad sick. It was the worst kind of sick I've felt for a long, long time. And this is just what happens in my life as a iwi RMA technician. And I just would like the council really to think about making some equitable decisions to resource iwi and hapu who are not getting anything from RMA training, 101 training. Some of us are more advanced than that, and we need different assistance. I understand that there are some whānau and iwi who need and who would like the RMA 101 training. Even a revitalised version of that will not produce the kinds of support that we need. So, and we're not the only ones in that situation. And the last thing I wanted to say was, in the context of whareroa, we know now that the groundwater has some really concerning issues around contaminants in the groundwater. We've got no data or no further information. I haven't. The whānau might have, but I've not had any further information other than the alert that went out. That just confirms and consolidates my point that I was trying to make about the living with the effects of the industry that the region benefits from, and asking the council to please think about where's the equity for whareroa in that situation when they're the ones living with now contaminated groundwater. I'm fearful for that whānau, but that's another issue. The point is, there's some inequity that's been here. It's never been acknowledged, and I think it's about time that that was acknowledged and more investment was put back into the place that lives with the effects of the industry that generates the region's ability and opportunities to, do cool things. Sorry, that's me. My voice is just about to croak.
Thank you, Peter. A point of clarification, we had your submission that we received is on behalf of the Wēnanga Te Ngāti Rangi, the Te Puna Wine Māori o Tauranga Moana, and then the EU Partners of Tauranga Moana Advisory Group. So you've got a written submission on that behalf and also a community incentives fund application. Is that just for Ngāti Rangi? Can you hear me?
Sorry, the audio is not very good.
Okay.
It's breaking up.
I was referencing
all I thought was that the
She just dropped out.
What would you like us to do? Just leave it?
Just leave it. Yeah, just leave it now. I think she's just.
Yeah, we'll just take it. She said we just don't choose.
We don't blame us.
Yeah, okay, all right, we'll move on to Grace Southern. Are you there, Grace?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there we are. The floor is yours. There's Peter too. No, we've lost Peter. So, Craig, please, the floor is yours. Well, the audio, the Zoom is yours.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Greg Southon. I'm actually the coordinator of the carbon reduction group. This is a personal submission, and I thank you very much for the opportunity of speaking to you. I must say I do find the sound difficult, so if you ask questions, can you ask it slowly? The key issue I want to get across is that is the need to get across to the public about what this climate emergency is all about. I appreciate the difficulty when there's a host of other challenges that the Regional Council is dealing with, and there's little obvious reason for people to take a climate emergency seriously. Climate change seems to many very remote in time and distance, and very different from fires and floods, which we normally still consider as emergencies. This is so humongous in reality. It's so devastating in the long term that it cannot be ignored or considered as just one of those regular items that the Regional Council needs to address. The Regional Council needs to provide a clear identification of the current climate threat, their progression, their long-term impact, and what we need to be doing about it. The information is already there in copious quantities. For many people, it is just too scary to face up with. It is very courageous leadership throughout society to address these blocks. The community needs a lot of help to appreciate what needs to be done and what the costs of inaction are. Currently, the common reaction to climate change issues is, what will this cost me? You need to move people to asking more, how can we best protect the future of our children? I hope this can be achieved by the community consultations that the Regional Council is undertaking. Just another comment about the consultation options. The Council excellently identifies the costs of each option, but it would be much greater value if the expected outcomes of each option were more clearly identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. That's very succinct. Do we have any questions from the floor? No, I thank you. Great, we've read your submission, we've heard what you've said, so we will be deliberating in due course, and we will get back to you when we've made our decisions. So thank you for your time today. Thank you. That's it.
You turn the camera off now?
Well, I do my hearing.
Johnny, can I just, are we finished?
Yes, I've just.
So-
I'll just finish the-